here today to do our first Christmas coaster. And I'm going to be using alcohol inks today. And one of my favorite ways to do alcohol inks is to use these fine tip applicators with a mixture of alcohol ink. This is Sailboat Blue alcohol ink. And then I mix it with some white, just some plain white alcohol ink. And so today when I use these, I'm going to be using blue, purple, pink, and this is a red, but it kind of comes across as a little bit of a watermelon color. And I'm going to be using the counterpart, the actual the darker version of these with it to give contrast to it. So this mixture is purple violet, which is this alcohol ink mixed with white, and the ratio of this is simply the color you want. So I put this in there and then I just mix white till it got to the color I wanted to see. So it is as simple as that. But mixing the white and the alcohol ink together does give a really neat effect in your project. So that is why I'm doing it that way. This is a Sailboat Blue. So this is Sailboat Blue and white. And this is just plain white alcohol ink. And then I use, this one is called Senorita Magenta, and it is one of the brightest, most beautiful pinks. So I did the same thing. I mixed this alcohol ink with white, and I just have to make sure they're shook up really well before I take the applicator or the lid off. And then this one it is red. It's called Watermelon, mixed with white, and I have wrote Ranger on the bottle because that's the brand. So of course I'll be putting links to these. So I also will have a plain white alcohol ink out for this project. I will be using a little bit of it. So I mixed up a little bit of resin, and when I'm working with alcohol inks in the way I'm using this for this project, I stirred up this resin about 30 minutes ago and I just let it sit so it's slightly warm, because it really does make a difference on how the alcohol inks interact or how they look when you're finished. So I'm going to take the lids off of these. I'll also put a link to these fine tip applicators or fine line applicators. I really like how well they work with this type of project. I got this beautiful little Christmas tree mold in an Etsy shop, so I'll also be putting a link to that. Because it's a mold out of what I ordinarily use, I'm going to be extremely careful when I use my heat gun, because I'm going to pour the clear in here and I'm just going to carefully warm up the resin enough to pop the bubbles, but I'm going to keep the heat gun far away because it will ruin this mold if we're not careful on how hot the mold is heated to. So, and of course this resin is got some bubbles in it, but it's not doing, it's been warmed up, so it's actually in pretty good shape. So I'm going to make this extremely thin. The idea here is to get your alcohol inks and swirl, and then put a green back on this tree, and then we're going to put this inside a coaster mold, so it needs to be thin. So I am not going to be filling this mold up even halfway. So let me get my heat gun. use this fine tip instead so I can point it directly. Yeah, that works better. So all I'm going to do with these is I'm going to do blue and then purple and then pink and then the red. And I'm only going to put one drop in the lines. I'm not going to stack the drops on top of each other. That does make a difference to how this design will look. The more you stack the drops, the more the alcohol will sink and the different the look will be. So I'm going to use the blue first. Purple. Pink. This is a gorgeously bright pink. Oops. And then the watermelon. And now I'm going to take the colors that match and put a couple drops here and there. So a drop of watermelon. Kind of went rogue there a little bit, those drops did, but that's okay. A couple drops of the pink. This is a small mold, so there's not a whole lot of working space here. That's okay. And then a couple drops of the purple. And now the blue. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the white and then I'm going to sprinkle white throughout. Now I'm going to put the lids on and let this sit for a minute. So one of the next step, and it's not, the next step is to do some quick swirls through the ink and then leave it for tomorrow. So we're not gonna, the more you swirl it, the more you have to be really careful because you might make it all just sink down. So I'm just gonna do some pretty swirls. Tomorrow I'm going to cover this, and then tomorrow I will come back to do our green layer, and then we will move on to the next part of the coaster. Okay, we are back. And looking at this, my plan was to put a green back on this today, but because that color completely covered this mold from one end to the other, I'm not going to do that. It won't show. So, oh, and this thing comes out really, really easy. So look at that. Really, really pretty. So I'm going to go ahead, and today I'm going to do, before we start our coaster project with these, I want to do a couple different colorways of these. So I'm going to do, today I'm going to do an orange, blue, and green one, and then maybe another color for when it's for when we go to start the next part of the coaster. So for those, I'm just going to do a fast motion so you can see. And I will be linking all the colors that I use in the video, and it's the same thing. Most of the main parts of these are going to be this mix of white and an alcohol ink color, and then of course I will show you each alcohol. I will pair them in the description so you can see which alcohol ink I use to mix with white for this one, and then of course the standard white alcohol ink that I use in these. So from here, I'm just going to do a couple more colorways, and I only have one mold, and that's why I'm going to do it this way. So I'll go ahead and take next steps for this colorway, and then I'll come back and do another colorway, and then we'll go to the next step of our coasters. Hello everybody, we are ready to do the next step. So we've got our Christmas trees, and today we're going to just do the back of the coasters. So the back scene or the backdrop for each tree, which will be the sky, with stars and snow, or however however we're going to get there. So we're not going to be putting the trees in the coasters today, but we're going to do the backdrops for each one. So we have a bunch of mixed colors, and basically what I'm looking at doing here is making nighttime skies. So we've got dark purple, dark blue, and I will be putting links to the colors that I use, so a little bit of each color, because I have 6 coasters going on here. So we've got the ultramarine blue, the violet, pigment or acrylic ink. I have a light blue, which is called light blue, the titanium white pigment paste. For accents, I have this really beautiful resin art or color art called Pink Parasol, and it's got a nice little shimmer to it, bluish shimmer. And then this one is Pearl X Salmon. And then these are the two little piggies over here, the Groovy and Inferno. Because these are so bright, I'm just going to be using these as accents to make the other colors pop up a little bit better. So the first thing I'm going to do, let me move the trees over. I wanted to have the trees out so you can kind of see how big they're going to be inside the coaster, and so you can kind of see how much room you have to work with for the trees. So let me put those aside. Out of space. 6 coasters. My area is a little sticky. I need more space so I can do more than one project at a time. Okay. There we go. All right, so I'm going to start with, I'm going to show you one and how I want to do it. And then this is just the white pigment paste. So I'm just going to put a dollop of it. And spread it throughout the bottom of the coaster. Okay, I'm going to heat that up a little bit. So next I'm going to take my purple and my salmon, and I'm going to put a couple drops of silicone oil in the purple, just a little squirt. And here's the salmon. Now remember, these trees are kind of big, so there's not going to be a whole lot showing. So now here's my spatula. I'm just going to take the spatula, and this is why I put the white down first, is so that you get this really neat effect inside the purple. Well, it'll bring up the white a little bit, and it'll look really neat. Now the bottom of this coaster specifically is going to be white, because I'm going to come in later and add white for the tree to be sitting on, so that the tree is sitting in the snow. So I'm not going to concentrate on making the purple designs go completely down. But I do want, and this is why I mixed up the piggies, because I think this would be the perfect place to add in this bright color. Didn't get enough of that salmon in there. There we go. Torch. And the neat thing about the silicone being put in this layer, I'll be able to, if you you want more dark, you put in more dark. If you want in more light white, you put in more white, and just kind of watch it do its thing. Even after you stop moving it around, it'll still move around for a while, but this is why I only put it in, it in the purple. I did not put it in any of the other colors. I'm going to put in a little pink too, because I feel like that'll be nice. So I'm going to do each of the background colors like this. So, and I'm going to speed it up to do those because I'm going to do them the same, but I'm just going to use a different merge of colors. But I will put on the screen which color I'm using with each one, so you kind of have an idea, and that, but you still won't have to watch me do it in real time. So I think these will have some really neat backgrounds to them. And this is just the very bottom layer, and picturing, my hands are sticky, the tree that matches the color scheme. So it'll be super cute, I think. Anyway, so the last thing I want to do before I cover them up is add a little bit of white to, this resin's been sitting here so it's a little bit thick, is a little bit of white to the bottom of each of the coasters. And I'm going to be using Prism Pour, which is the Ultra Metallics from Color Art. And this one is super sparkly. So you have to stir it up really good before you use it. And but once you get it going, you can kind of see how that sparkle comes up to the top. It's like a pearl. And stirs it nice, but it really is surprising how much it does separate. Okay. Gotcha. See if that's enough. It makes it thick, so I think that it'll be fine for these coasters, but this resin had been sitting here for a while. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to add to the bottom of each of these. That's it. I'm just going to add a little bit. It'll kind of push the design up, but it will help us tomorrow when we put in our trees. We're going to put basically put snow in on the base of the tree in clear resin. So this will help kind of get that look if we start at the bottom. Okay, it's been a couple of hours, so I wanted to come in and it's sticky and put the trees on these coasters. Well, they're still incredibly gooey, but if I put the trees in right now, they won't mess up the design. So I just wanted to go ahead and do that. There we go. So I wanted to make a point of putting them in the resin on the first, this is the first layer, so they're touching the bottom of the coaster, but also so that we'll have time to, when we go in to fill this in, we'll have more room to work with for them. So that is all. See you tomorrow. Okay, we are back. And I went ahead and today's layer is going to be extremely easy. So it's just, I went ahead and mixed up everything in anticipation of it. So today we're going to be using the same white base that we did at the bottom, and that is the Prism Pour Ultra Metallics that I got from Resin Art Chantilly Lace. And I've tried it a couple different ways. It mixes pretty thickly. So I put the Prism Pour in, and then I put in the resin, and I could probably add more resin to it, but right now I'm going to leave it like it is because I don't need a whole lot. So, and since this is a fast layer, I'm just going to hope it stays good enough. The next one that I mixed was some Stardust powder. This is also from Color Art, Stardust mica powder. And I really like this because it gives a good accent. And it actually, even though it looks purple, it also glistens like ever so slightly glistens like a teal color that's almost, it reminds me of the Aurora Borealis type colors. So I'm going to use a little bit of these two colors. And then we're also going to take clear and we're going to mix in some pearl beads, which will be like snow, potentially like snow in the background. So I'm just going to put those directly into the clear. And I also have this Microbead Shaker that has some too. Make sure we get some snow effects in here. So I'm going to, the other thing to remember about this is these little beads will sink right to the bottom, which is perfectly fine. And it's also why I only typically you only see me putting them in clear resin, because I'm putting it on top of a color. If I were to put the pearl beads or even try to sprinkle them on top, they sink down inside, even if it's a thin layer. So the next thing you do before we get going on the background resin is there is a slight resin, because of the silicone oil we used, you can see slight resin, like it looks like a film over the top of this. You can see it slightly. I've already taken an alcohol wipe and wiped these down, and that residue look is still there, so we won't be putting silicone oil in any of the other layers because the top of these and the overall look of these is going to be glossy resin, and by putting silicone, mixing it into your colors, it does give it a slight film. I mean, looking at it directly, it looks fine, but there is a slight film. And the other thing I did, and this of course is completely optional, and it also is because of the way the mold is. So this mold had swirls on it, which I put some of those pearl beads in, and it's, let me see if there's a better example. I mean, there's actually little pearl beads that fell into those swirls, but and it'll look different once I put the clear on top of it. Those swirls, I think, would completely disappear. So I have taken the little gel pens and traced each of the swirls so that they kind of stand out just a little bit. And of course that's subtle, and I wasn't necessarily expecting that the swirls were going to show. The trees were just supposed to be pretty. So just so you realize that usually when you pour clear resin onto a clear thing like this, it makes it disappear. So that's also optional, and I will be putting the links to this cookie cutter. I got the mold. I got the mold on Etsy, and I just was instant. I mean, I was actually looking at Christmas tree molds for forever, trying to find one that I really liked, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's the one. That is the Christmas tree mold that I want. So I will put a link to that on here, but any one of your favorite Christmas tree molds or even wreaths or whatever it is you want to use would be absolutely fine. So I'm going to home in on one of these, and we're just going to do one, and then I'll do the rest off camera. So I'm going to pour my clear resin. Now, I don't really necessarily expect, and remember I stirred in microbeads. I don't necessarily expect for the tree to be covered today, because the last layer of this project will be clear just to cover it all, but I kind of like having the effects, the dimensional effects that go into it. So this is the clear resin with the little snowy beads in it, which once I heat this, the beads will become a little bit more obvious. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of this on the base, so that the base of the tree, so you can kind of see two different layers of the snow. And I wanted it to rub up against the bottom of the tree. And this is a little bit thick, so I'm going to add more clear resin to it after I do this one particularly. So now I'm going to heat this up. This white, the Chantilly lace, has such a stunning opally sparkle effect on it. It's super beautiful. Can make some of that clear come down in there. Now this is there we go. So I've kind of made a full clear coat that even kind of goes into that, which is totally fine. The whole idea is for this to look like a kind of a layered snow effect. You could make some pretty swirls in there if you like. Sometimes they stay, sometimes they don't, but either way, it'll be a neat effect. And what makes that effect is the clear swirling into the swirling into the snow. Okay, I'm gonna heat it up with my torch, kind of letting it sit there for a couple of minutes while those micro bubbles come up to the top. And you can see those little pearl beads in there. Now you could say that's, you know, stars too, but I was thinking snow. I didn't want to put a whole lot of snow on there because I don't want the snow to cover up the tree. I just kind of wanted to give it a really pretty effect, you know, a little bit of an effect. One thing else you could use, and I bought these a long time ago, but it is true that food sprinkles work in resin pretty well. If I can find them. And also, flitter glitter would have been a pretty effect to put in the bottom of, if you don't have the Chantilly lace. Using some flitter glitter might have been nice. Oh, here they are. And then here's some food sprinkles, some little sparkly, you know, pearls. And I guess what we could do is, let me see if I have a copy. I was at Michael's and I made a tray a while back with using food sprinkles as little golden coins on the tray, and it looked really cute. So you could take something like this, just kind of intersperse it. So the background snow can be smaller and then the foreground snow can be bigger. But I wouldn't do a whole lot of them. They sink down really nice. And so if you're going to do this, I would not put them in and then use the heat gun. I would put them in after your resin is heated, like right now, and then poke them down inside. Because these have like a pearly shimmer effect on them, if you heated it, it's potential that they would kind of smear inside your design. So make sure that you're not putting them in the actual clear resin, pouring them in, and then heating them, because it would probably mess up the design just a little bit. Also, just incidentally, there is the styrofoam that people use to put in that putty. Also, once it's sunk down inside, you can definitely get away with torching it. So because they're not up at the top. So that styrofoam that you can use in the putty, the hand putty for kids to play with. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like goo. There's little styrofoam beads that you can buy to put inside that. It looks like this. For holiday crafts. This does not work in resin. The reason it doesn't work is it will not sink down inside. You put it in and it just continuously floats up to the top, and you can't use any heat because it'll mess it up. So if you were going to use it in like UV resin, it probably would work just fine, but understand that it's going to float no matter what. So you would definitely have to do a second layer to go over the top of it. So the way I use resin, to be clear, those little styrofoam beads don't work, but it might work if it was the last thing you did and you planned on covering them up the next day. Okay, so now I have my little snow dots, and I've got my snow in the bottom. I'm going to take my Stardust resin, and all I'm going to do is take a daughter and make some pretty swirls or effects in here. Now note, whenever I do this, these swirls will not stay exactly put the way I did them, so I usually will come back and kind of play with them a little bit and try to get them to have the effect that I want. It's not easy, at least with the resin that I use. It's to get exactly like this one got all squiggly, but it's in other words, you can't just put them in and walk away all the time. Sometimes I get lucky, but it's still this is basically the effect that I want, is to be able to say, okay, there's a couple pretty swirls in the wind, in the snow, and it does, when this cures, it picks up the light. This mica powder picks up the light so beautifully. So this of course is a completely optional, but it does, this is something that I like to see. So that is it for this layer. And tomorrow when we come back, I'm going to, as far as I can see, I think I'm just going to fill in the rest of this tree. Now this tree, the whole entire surface of the tree is completely above the resin right now. So all the resin I put in today only comes up to about halfway to the tree. So that was intended, and I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these, and then we'll come back tomorrow to fill it the rest of the way in. If we take a look at it and decide we want more swirls or more snow, we can do that, but we will see what we think tomorrow. We are back for the final layer. And so today, or for the last layer, all I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this with clear, and then put a little bit more of the white at the base of each of the trees. And I go ahead and add in my resin. I want to make sure we get enough in there to cover up the tree. And the white is the same Chantilly lace that we had been using on all the other layers. He can. We've covered the tree with the clear. The effects that the effects of the swirl, the gold swirl, and the beads that I put into the mold are really coming out. So it's actually really neat. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and fill these with clear and cover them up, and then I will sand them and show you the final product. If you enjoy my videos and would like to help me out, you can do that by clicking like, subscribing, and hitting that bell, and I'll see you next time.